this time. All right, we should be live on YouTube now. I know John Olaf Krems had asked in the thread if we're on there, so hopefully you see us now.
I see it. Please stand by.
Stand by.
And I see it.
We should be. Asked in the thread if we're. Yes, I see me on there, so I think we're good. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. I'm here. I also have my colleague Jason.
Hi.
Everyone else is signed in on the sheet here. So let's go ahead and get started. I put an agenda down for today. I'm just going to read that out for us here. And if anyone here wants to add more items, just let us know here. So I thought we could talk about the trace controller that, Matt, you've been working on, and anything related to inspector and CDP, specifically maybe what Jan was working on. And a couple items under other that I thought we might want to discuss. One of them being the big list of members we have in the diagnostics working group and what we might do about that, and then what we want to have on the agenda for the summit at Node Interactive, if and what. Does that make sense?
Sounds good to me.
Yep.
All right, so let's quickly just review the previous meeting where we were at. Some of these items are still open, so I think it's good for us to just review. We briefly talked about debugging an already running process. I don't think we've reached a conclusion. That was where SIG user 1 can put Node into a listening state for debugging, and we weren't sure how to do that for the new protocol. So we talked about that, but didn't reach a conclusion. We talked about the message text for inspect. I know I made something of a stink about the taking out the Chrome DevTools URL. We talked about that on GitHub, and I think that's pending a later release. We closed the issue about a reduced profile for Node, or a specific profile for Node for CDP. And we closed the one about inspector working with other runtimes for now. We talked about the CLI debugger and Jan's implementation. I actually, maybe later on we could talk about that. I've been working with Chrome Remote Interface a little bit for that. And then we talked about Matt's trace controller. So today, let's start. I mean, if it's okay with you, Matt, do you want to talk about what you've done there and what our next steps are going to be?
Definitely. So basically, there have not been substantial changes. Okay, so yes, I've opened the pull request since the last meeting, and I think the only substantial change from what I mentioned last time was this file that was in V8 and was going to cause build changes and was very problematic. We pulled a copy of that into Node to remove the build problems, and so the current state of trace event is, or of the pull request, is kind of decoupled from that particular problematic file in V8. I think the next step is to hopefully get as many people as possible to look at it. There were some good comments right when it opened, and some changes that have been actioned on. And I think the next step will be to get more people to look at it and get more feedback.
I know that I think we have two open items long term. I don't know if this needs to block on them or not. One is to add trace points into Node Core or some of the modules. and one is to consider whether there should be a JavaScript layer on top. Are those the two? Are there any other things, or do you agree with those, Matt?
I definitely agree with those. I think the hope is that the decisions on those two fronts could be made independent of this initial pull request. So this would introduce the core system and decisions about where trace points should be added, what the performance impact would be of those particular points, and how to expose it to JS could be done after this is kind of decided on and has gone through. But those are both definitely still open questions.
So just to be clear, so you want this should land without any of those things. Those would be other PRs, right?
Yes. What kind of the hope? I mean, I put up some examples of adding, or I hope I put up an example of adding trace points just to demonstrate what it would look like. But yeah, the hope is to land this without any JS interface or trace points.
Yeah, so there's going to be lots of yak shaving and back shedding on where exactly the trace points are going to be and what the JS API should look like. And I think those are independent discussions that I don't think this should really block on those discussions closing, right? So as a community, we can build how to trace and how to present a JavaScript API. This is just a core framework that lets you record a buffer of traces and put it out to a file in a very, very low overhead way.
Yeah, I'm agreed that we should keep them separate.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, me too. Is there anybody working on that? Have we started any work on adding those trace points? I was actually thinking of working on that, maybe get something in before Node Interactive so we can show people it.
So some very basic trace points we can add in async wrap, and that gives us like fairly interesting things to look at. So I mean, on our side, we were actually hoping that we could land this so that I mean, at this point, given that the PR hasn't made progress in the past couple of weeks, I'm not sure what the path forward for this one is.
Mm-hmm.
So I was hoping to get some closure before some work on adding the trace points was done, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. Exactly. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. In other words, what do we need to do next to get this landed, and how long will that take? Yeah, let's talk about that.
But I think also, so we have not taken on, so if you're interested in adding trace points and starting work on that, that's not something that we're currently doing. We just added the trace points that were used to generate the images in that pull request, just to kind of show some of the data that could be pulled out of this.
And Matt, I couldn't find the sample, at least not in the PR, that was with async wrap.
Okay, I can put that in the meeting notes here then.
Okay, yeah, that'd be great.
I haven't had a chance to look at the actual PR, but is the call, like the C function call that you'd make, separate from, like, not tied to V8?
The C function call. So you mean if you have a trace point, at that trace point, under some condition, we're going to call a C function to record a trace into the buffer. So all of that code is in Node. That's my understanding, and Matt can correct me.
So the set of macro, basically there's this one file that introduces a huge set of macros, and deep down in those macros, they will eventually call into V8. That the logic at that point, like there's a place where if there were desire to call somewhere else, that could be done.
Yeah, okay, that was
the call makes it through to V8.
my only question.
Are you saying, Michael, should we consider the very bottom layer right before it's V8 platform, that should be more abstracted at some point?
I guess I just wanted to make sure that, yeah, we basically are introducing an abstract API that lets you call trace points, and whatever's behind the scenes can then consume those. So in this case, the code actually will end up calling the V8 API to actually consume them. But if Chakra wanted to do that, they can easily do that as well.
Yeah, so I think the macros use some V8 APIs or some APIs exposed by V8. But I think Chakra Shim could provide those APIs as well, right? So these are actually, maybe in the meeting notes, Matt can include a link to what these things are that are called, the APIs, and we can go from there. It was not a big interface.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm because I think my internet connectivity is being a bit choppy, so I didn't quite follow everything. But
okay, so we need to, here in this meeting, we should talk about what do we need to finish, what is needed to get this landed. And then we've already said that trace points, nobody's working on them. So I will look at, if you can drop in here, Matt, the stuff that you did on async graph, I'll look at them and see if I can add a couple more or use those. And then the last thing is the JS interface. Let's go back through all those things. So what do we need to do to get this landed? Is there anything that we should be doing here?
I think it just needs a review. That's what we're waiting for.
So are we looking for LGTMs from collaborators?
That's right.
Okay.
so I guess the question is, do we need to chase anybody in particular to try and take a look at it?
I think Ben would be a good person to review this.
Has he been? Maybe we should like ask him in the PR to do that.
Yeah, well, we can start with that. But like, I mean, the more people who can take a look at this, the better it's going to be.
Yep. No, agreed.
I think the only other thing that came up on the pull request that has like on that front, so Trevor brought up performance concerns. I think the hope is that those conversations can be left primarily to like when we decide where trace points should be added, the frequency at which they're hit and such would be considered at that time. But I mean, if there's a fundamental thing that can be changed in the core tracing system for performance, then exploring that in this pull request makes a lot of sense, I think. But I'm hoping to leave the overhead of the particular points we choose to trace to be discussed when trace points are decided on.
Yeah, I'd be of the same mind that if there's something fundamental about what's in the PR that makes it slow, then yes. But if it's just that there's going to be some overhead no matter what, then that should be, when you add the trace point, consider that aspect.
Yeah, as an example, I mean, if you want to do a trace point after every machine instruction, that is going to be exceedingly slow, of course. So It's a question of what is the type of event, what is the signal that you want to trace. And the rule of tracing is you don't trace a signal that is extremely high frequency. So in V8 terms, in V8, the V8 team does not trace the inline caches because those are hit very, very frequently. They do trace the rest of the V8 code base pretty extensively. And so they made a determination that actually ICs don't make sense to trace. That's just too high frequency to be a signal to be tracing.
Okay, so we're saying as we add trace points, each one should be evaluated for perf. Yeah. Okay, and then, so anything else on trace points? Thanks, Matt, for pasting that in there.
Yes, so that's just an example. That's the original example of the trace points that generated the images in the pull request. So you can take a look there.
Sweet. Cool. So if nothing else on trace points, has anybody started work on JavaScript interface?
Nothing on our end.
So actually, Jason has been looking into it a little over here. Do you want to talk anything about that, Jason?
So I'm working on a proposal for a JavaScript API for these tracing APIs. Obviously, performance is a top consideration, and that may even impact the API design. But I'm not quite ready to share that, but maybe in a week or so I'll have something to share with the community that we can get feedback on.
That make sense?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. Okay, so I think that's it for trace controller for now. Should we move on to inspector and the debugging protocol? So yeah, so let's do that. So Jan put up node inspect, and does anybody want to talk about that? Michael, did you take a look at that? I think I saw you on that thread.
I think I don't have a lot to say. I think that there was, we suggested that possibly it could be added as a separate project, but I think Ali was suggesting that it actually should be pulled in because the existing one is going to be deprecated or has been deprecated, if that's what I remember.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I chatted with John Olaf Krims on IRC a little bit, and so that was my opinion. But I don't think John is really comfortable at this point putting it into the core repo. And after all, he's doing the work, and wherever he's comfortable putting it, I think that's what we should go for. And think at some point we'll need this in core. So it's incumbent on, I think, this working group to figure out how to take this work that John is doing and bring it into core. And I don't think we should make it his problem.
Yeah, I think I agree. In other words, we can bring it in as its own repo because we're working on it. And then when it's ready, we'll plan to move it into core.
Yeah, I think bringing it in at least, would up the level of visibility in the overall community. And you're right, if he's not comfortable, we should wait to pull it into core. So it's probably still a good next step, right?
Yep. I actually was using the Chrome remote interface library from Cyrus Ann, which generates the domains and the protocol, and it can talk to Node and generate from Node also. I just wondering what people's thoughts are, specifically Ali, if you've looked at that before, and if you think either that or some form of it could be a foundation for a CLI debugger.
Actually, I haven't looked too much into it, so no, I don't have any specific thoughts at this point.
Okay, I'll keep looking at it. Actually, I was able to do some pretty cool things with it, like generate profiles and step debugging, of course, and whatever's there. So I'll see where I can get with that and with Jan's. Is there anything else on Inspector that we should discuss? I will take that as a no. So then the last two items on the agenda are, first of all, the membership. I was actually thinking about this and thinking we could just ask the people that are on the list if they're interested in staying on. There are some people that have not been around for a while, and to start with that.
Yeah, I think that happened in the build work group recently. There was just an issue open saying, who's still interested. I recently did that also for the benchmarking work group, so I think that's a reasonable model to follow.
Just writing that down. Yeah, I guess I can send that out after this meeting. figure out a way to send to everyone and figure out if they want to stay. And then the last thing is the agenda for the diagnostics working group at the collaboration summit. I was actually thinking maybe we should, like, if we have trace points, maybe we should spend some time figuring out where we might put them in core and talking about that.
That sounds good.
So will Matt and Ali, I'm assuming you'll be there. Matt, will you be there?
Yes.
So maybe you could like start off and give a little overview, and then we can kind of go together.
Sure.
Any other topics that we should consider there?
It might be good to talk about context propagation. I don't know if all the people who we need for that discussion are going to be there. That's a good one that we wanted to do at the Europe one but couldn't assemble.
Is there an issue or two, Ali, that discussed that?
I think it came up in the last time we were discussing in this working group. Let me see if we can find.
I feel like there was an issue.
Link in the comments. That's, if I find it.
Okay, so if you can post that in, paste that into the meeting notes, Ali, and then people can review that. We can also I start a thread in the Collaboration Summit repo. So if you want to just add there, an item or two. It's probably good to put things in there, maybe put some related issues and stuff so that if people want to be up to speed on it beforehand, they can. I don't know, at least I like to do that.
So this is the diagnostic working group issue number 58, which is where we last discussed it. Let me put a link in the talk. Yeah.
Oh, the APM summit? Oh, okay. So should we go through that and take some of the items that were in that?
I think so. Or that's what my suggestion.
Yeah, that makes sense. Maybe we should, okay. Okay, so that can be the foundation. I guess there's not much else to talk about then on that, right? Okay, so anything else that we should discuss or that should be on our radar?
So the only thing else for people's awareness, sometime early in 2018, I expect the old debug API in V8 to be removed. It has been deprecated for a number of years. And now that V8 Inspector is getting used by Chrome, DevTools, and Visual Studio Code, the old API is imminently going to go away.
Do we have a strategy for when we want to say the new protocol is official? I guess maybe we should have a list of the things that need to be done. The core stuff is, Ali, is the core stuff done now?
So the V8 Inspector API is official from the V8 side because if you look at V8 5.5, it's shipping the new API.
That's 5.5, but we're still 5.4 in Node.
Yeah. So the question is going to be when Node version 8 rolls around, there's going to be some version of V8 that's greater than 5.5. So question is, given that it's an official API in V8, what are the things that we need to do in Node to make it official for Node? And part of the question there is going to be, do we have a CLI debugger? Can we do the things that we could do before? So that's the reason I'm bringing it up now, because I think it would be good to know what are the things we need to do that are going to be affected.
Yeah, we know the CLI debugger. Is there any other thing that stands out? Okay, well, for right now, we put down CLI debugger, but that's something to think about if there's anything else that is needed. So we definitely need to get that done so that we can say it's official.
Yeah, actually, even the CLI debugger, I don't think we have to. So, okay, sorry, I was confusing two different points. So one of the points is the old API is going away. But whether or not V8 Inspector is considered official is independent of that, right?
Yes. Well, I wouldn't say that exactly. Like we can't, it obviously can't completely go away till the next one is official. Right?
Well, it's official from, well, okay. So the node, the CLI, I don't think we need to have a CLI debugger that works on top of the V8 Inspector before saying the V8 Inspector protocol is official.
Yeah.
Right. So the old one, we may still be on the old version, may still be functional enough to the level it is functional today. That doesn't change V8 Inspector in one way or the other, right? So we're not adding things or removing things from V8 Inspector just for a CLI debugger that uses the old protocol. So I think those are independent things, and we should figure out like what are the list of things we need to do in order to say that the new protocol is official. I think one of the things is going to be having ability to automatically launch or maybe being able to reload. So when you in the debugger, when you hit reload or restart, today that doesn't work. Maybe that's one of the things that should happen. I don't know. It's entirely subjective, I think.
Is that are you talking about APIs that would be would that be an API you're talking about, or are you talking about like the signals and things like that?
I don't think this would be an API. It would be interoperability. So actually, now that you brought it up, signals is a good point as well, right? So today you cannot. The old debugger works with signals. The new one doesn't work with it. So we need to figure out how do we. So we cannot free up the signal without deprecating the old debugger.
Right.
So one way to get out of that would be to say, actually, we're going to move the old debugger to the new protocol, and now we can reuse the signal.
Yeah, I guess that could be our conclusion, is that we're not going to switch the signal till we remove the old debugger. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
You get in Chrome Dev Tools. Do you ever need to attach to an already running process, or is that less relevant there?
I think it would be good to be able to. I think it's a valid use case for people to be able to attach to an existing process.
Yeah, just for general people that need to.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you think it would be worthwhile to start an issue maybe for this? What do we need to go official with the V8 Inspector? In the diagnostics repo, I'm saying.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. Okay, I can do that, and I'll put in the stuff that we talked about here and once it's a thread, then we can all think about it over the next little while.
Yeah, I think also if you can, Ali, so do you have an idea of when it might be deprecated? Because that would be good to have if it gives us some urgency.
I don't have specific dates from the VA team on this, although, I mean, I think they're itching to do it.
Right.
Yeah, I don't have something more concrete. If I do get something more concrete, I can let everybody know.
Okay.
Cool. All right, anything else? Any questions from YouTube or anything like that?
Nothing additional on our end.
Sweet. Well, thanks everyone for joining, and hopefully you'll see everyone in a few weeks.
Yeah, see you there. Bye.
Thanks.
Thanks.